she's been here with us, about 6 months. About 6 months. She came to us 2 years ago and said, I think I want to be involved at the river. At the time, for whatever reason, I'm not sure it didn't work out, but when she came, whenever she came, it was perfect. And she helps us with people, and she's really good at what she does. This past weekend, we were able to help some people that she referred to us, and we refer people to her as well. It's just the same old thing, folks. We're here to help people, no matter where they're from or what they're doing or what they've done. None of that matters. And she's got a heart for people because she loves people and she loves God, and that's what we all do here. Her name is Aislin Boler, and let's give Aislin a Great River welcome. Come on, Aislin. And then you bring your guitar up. Yep.
We had the study Bibles, you know.
Yeah, I told. No, you weren't.
Okay, so like you said, I am Aislin, and I am by no means any type of public speaker. That is not my calling in life. But we're going to do the best that we can tonight, okay? So, I am 27 years old. I live right outside of Sebastopol, and I have lived there my entire 27 years. I have a little girl. She's 5 years old, and she will come up in my talk tonight. Her name is Rosie, and she's very special. Barry was talking about what I do. I am a licensed professional counselor, which means that I help folks who don't necessarily know how to help themselves in the moment. I deal with people who have some type of mental illness, whether it be anxiety or depression, to the really, really big stuff like bipolar and all that good stuff. So it's really fun. I love it. I've been doing it for about 4 years, and that is where I'm supposed to be. And so I say all of that about what I do because the way that I became a counselor, the reason behind me becoming a counselor was my brother. And so pretty much our story tonight is a lot to do with my brother. His name is Corey. And so Corey began using drugs of some sort when he was 14. And so he's 7 years older than me, so you can imagine that as a 7-year-old child, I didn't know a whole lot about what was going on in my family. My family was very religious, very spiritual, still are. My father is a preacher. My great-grandparents started our church. I had been raised in church, as had my brother, and so very sheltered. Didn't know a whole lot about anything to do with the addiction world or the drug world or anything like that. It just hadn't really been a part of my life. And so I'll talk more about that as we go. I kind of want to start by talking about the difference between redemption and restoration, because there is a difference. You hear the word redemption, and it's just a feel-good word, isn't it? What does redemption mean? Redemption means that your debt is paid, basically. You are no longer indebted to whoever or whatever. You have been made clean, right? We talk about being redeemed through the love of Christ. So what's the difference in being redeemed and being restored? So the word restoration means to be put back into working order, to be brought back to a functional state. And so you can see there's a little bit of a difference there, right? In one, you're paying a price. And in the other, someone is coming in and they're making you new again. They're making you work again, right? My story is one of restoration. Okay? And so, without further ado, I did not bring my Bible. I brought my phone, and I hope that's okay. Sorry. Okay, so my first scripture, hang on. Okay, my scripture tonight is going to be a very well-known passage, and it's the parable of the Prodigal Son. Okay, so it says, and then he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. And so he divided them his livelihood, and not many days after, the younger son gathered everything together and he took off. He journeyed to a far country. And there, what did he do? He wasted everything with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land. So he's kind of up the creek without a paddle, if you want to say it like that. He began to be in want, and then he went and he joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed the swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pies that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. So he went from way up here to way down here real fast. When he came to himself, and he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise," he had a plan, "I will arise, and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me one of your hired servants." Okay? So he had his plan in place. And he arose and he came to his father, and when he was still a great way off, the father saw him, and boy was he happy. It says he had compassion, and he ran and fell on his neck and kissed him, and the son said to him, "Father, I've sinned against heaven, and in your sight I am no longer worthy to be called a son." But the father said to his servants, "Bring out the best robe and put it on him, put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to be merry. Okay? That's a pretty good story, right?
Yep.
And that's usually where a lot of people cut it off. Okay? I mean, how can you compete with that, right? I mean, this prodigal son, he has gone from the worst of the worst. He is down in the swines. He's hanging out with the pigs, and he's chilling out eating with them because ain't nobody else giving him nothing, right? So, of course, when he comes home, I've seen the panic and I've seen the worry on the parent's face. I've seen it because mine had the same look. They don't know where he's at. They don't know what he's doing. They don't know if he's dead or alive. I've seen it. And so I can understand 110% why that father looked, and I don't even think that he knew for sure that it was his son coming down the road. I think that he just had that glimmer of hope that that's my son. I thought that he was dead, but here he is. He's coming down the road. And so he's pumped up, right? I think we all would be. So, very good analogy for the Christian coming home, right? We're lost in sin, and then we're home, and we get regaled in all of the finery, right?
Right.
But what about that other son? Because it says in the beginning there's two sons, right?
That's right.
So we're gonna read about him real quick. And so it says, now his older son, he was in the field. He was working. He was doing what he did every day. And as he came and he drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And so he called one of the servants and he said, "What's going on?" And the servant said to him, "Your brother has come. And because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf." Oh boy, we got a party going on. But the older brother was angry, and he would not go in. And therefore his father came out, and he pleaded with him. And so he answered, and he said to his father, "Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commandment at any time. And yet you never gave me even a young goat, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, who has devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him." And the father replied and said, "Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found." And so, as you read the older brother's section, a lot of people get mad at him.
Yeah.
They get mad at him because they're like, why would you not be happy that the brothers come home, man? Like, you had no clue what he was doing out there. You didn't know if you were going to see him again. Why would you not be happy? Why would you be jealous? Right?
Yeah.
And so I started looking, when I was putting some of this together, I started looking at the commentary for what, Bible scholars had to say about the older brother. And some of them even say, he was almost as bad as the Pharisees. He was looking down his nose at his brother, saying, "Oh, what trash.
Yeah.
I've been here. I've been doing my job. What trash." Right? I have a different perspective on the older brother because there's a whole lot of emotion that goes into that prodigal son coming home and you being the sibling, you being the one that has been there and has watched everything go down.
Yep.
There's a whole lot of a difference in opinion with all of that, but you can kind of take all of it and compile it into one big ball, and that's pretty much what I have felt for the last 20 years of my life, if you want to be really, really honest. And so I use that story as an illustration, not that it's a perfect fit, but it's pretty close. And so, yeah, that story it's always been pretty sensitive to me. And I kind of get angry sometimes when people do stop with just the prodigal son, because there was another kid in the house. And he wasn't always a grown man out in the field working.
Right.
At some point he was a kid, and at some point he had to live through whatever that younger brother decided to do. And in my case, it was my older brother. And he set the tone for what my childhood looked like. And I don't want to be a cliche therapist over here and be like, let me tell you about my childhood, and that's why I am the way that I am. But truthfully, we can look back at what we have experienced over our lifetime at a very young age, and that does set in place usually what we choose to do with our older life when we get those freedoms, right? And so, with that, I'll hit some high points, what life with my brother was like. Now, some of you may have seen Corey before, some of you may know Corey, but Corey is a striking person. When you see him in person, he's 6'2", 6'3", he's huge, I mean, very muscled up. He is just a very attractive person. I mean, you can't help but look at him. And he's loud, and he's charismatic, and he's fun to talk to because he's got a very joyful and very effervescent sense of life. He's full of it. Oh, I mean, he can talk to anybody, anywhere, and he can make a friend. It doesn't matter. And that's one of the things that I've always been so jealous of, because it didn't matter if he was knee deep in all of the junk that he had been doing over the weekend and had no thought in his head that was actually his, or if he had just come out of the pulpit giving his testimony. It didn't matter. He was still going to find a friend. You know? He just had that kind of personality. And so, when I think one of my very first vibrant memories of being the sibling of an addict was I was 13. Well, yeah, that's the one that comes to mind first. I was 13 and I woke up for school one day and I heard there was a whole lot of commotion going on in my house. And I mean, I'm getting ready and Corey's 20-ish, somewhere in there. And I opened the door and I'm watching my parents drag Corey down the hallway. He's blue. He's overdosed. He's not supposed to be here anymore. And so I'm 13 years old. I'm supposed to be getting ready to go to school that day and hang out with my buddies. And my brother's fixing to be brain dead, right? And so that was kind of a trying experience for me because he was in ICU and the whole 9 yards. And so again, all of the attention, all of the focus for my very tight-knit family was where?
Right.
On that prodigal son, right? And it wasn't so much that they were holding him up or anything like that. Now, he is talented. My brother can sing. He can play the guitar. He's just a very talented, like I said, a very attractive person. And so it wasn't even that they were saying that what he was doing was good. It was just that he required all of that attention all of the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at me, and I mean, I'm tall and stuff, but I am by no means an intimidating figure. I'm not something that's, overpowering in a crowd. I'm just me. And so I've always been just me. I've always been the one to be in the field doing what I was supposed to be doing. I've always been the older brother that was at home working like I should have been. And so anyway, he goes and he's in the hospital and the whole 9 yards, and I got skipped that day of school, and then the next day I was back. And that's kind of a weird opening statement, like, hey, Aislin, why weren't you at school yesterday? oh, you know, my brother's in ICU, he tried to overdose. Just not really what you want to tell anybody, and nobody knew what was going on. I mean, it was a very well kept secret for the most part. Like, we just kind of kept everything under wraps so that, you know, we could contain it. We could keep it under control if nobody knew about it.
Yep.
Right? I remember one Sunday morning, my daddy came and picked me up for church. We live about 30 seconds from our church. He came and picked me up for church, and I'm telling you, I've never seen my daddy the way that he looked that day. He was so angry. I mean, it was like pouring out of him. He was so angry. And finally, he let something slip about having to go pick up Corey from jail because he had gotten a DUI. He wasn't but 17 at the time. And he had gone and gotten a DUI and a possession charge and whatever else. And so my daddy had to go and pick him up from the jailhouse that Sunday morning. And it's those kinds of things. I didn't experience it. I wasn't the one sitting in the jailhouse or anything like that. And I wasn't the one being called to come get him. But it's just the fact that it consumed everybody. His addiction, his choices took over everything else. It trumped everything else. And I have fantastic parents. I do. I have some of the best people in this entire world to call, my mama and my daddy and my grandparents. They are fantastic. And they didn't know what else to do but try to save him and try to love him. And so at a very young age, I realized that it was my job, like I said, to be in the field and to be doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Not to cause any trouble, not to do anything to cause a stir, but to do exactly what I knew I was supposed to be doing. And I did. I did. I mean, you can ask my parents, for the majority of my teenage years, I was pretty much a perfect kid. I drove too fast, but for the most part, I was a perfect kid. I never got in trouble. I mean, I wasn't trying to sneak out and go to parties or anything like that. In fact, I didn't want to go to parties. I was invited and I didn't want to go. I was at home, chilling out, watching TV, just about every night. So I was not in any kind of way a rule breaker. And I tried so very hard in my ways to bring some glory, I guess is a good way to say that. I'm proud of my brain. I've got a good brain. And so academics, schoolwork, that was my forte. That's where I shined. That's where I did the most good, because I knew that it didn't take a whole lot of effort for me to be the absolute best. And so I was the best. And if there was any reason why I was not the best, you can guarantee that I'm in a corner somewhere hyperventilating because I'm scared to death that somebody's not going to be proud of me, right? So I've recently started therapy myself, and Jay's gonna roll his eyes at this, but I've recently started therapy myself, and the therapist asked me, I'm talking about all this stuff and going over all this stuff, and she asked me, she said, have you ever been somebody's favorite person? And I sat there and I watched the tears come up in my eyes, and I said, no, I really don't think so. I really don't think so. And that's not to throw blame on anybody. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
That's what addiction does.
Yes.
It wipes everything else off the map.
Yes.
That's the only thing that you're going to be able to focus on. You're going to internalize that. Even if it's not your own personal struggle, you're going to internalize that. You're going to take it on as yours, and you're going to become something that's not even you anymore. And I became something that was not even me anymore, because I was fighting against that attention that he was getting over here because of his problems, and I was wanting to be in the spotlight over here, and it just became this whole big mess. And so whenever she said, have you ever been somebody's favorite person? And I said, no. Then started clicking with me. All of this stuff that I had chosen to do a little bit later on out of my teenage years started clicking, because I got involved in a relationship very early on that was nowhere near where I should have been. It was just not. I mean, there was no drugs or alcohol involved, nothing like that, but from the very beginning of that relationship, I was told that I was pretty and that I was important. Okay, I'm pretty and I'm important. Those are two things that I've been waiting to hear, right? But there wasn't anything else. There was no love. There was no care. There was no concern for who I was. And so I am devoted, right? At this point, because I've heard that I'm pretty and that I'm important, I am devoted. I am 100% invested, right? So those two things that I heard at the very beginning, they were gone just about as quickly as they came.
Right.
And so here I am, I'm devoted, I'm involved in this. I had no right to be. I had no business being where I was. And it got me some pain and heartache later on. Some stuff that I would not wish on anybody else. I made some choices, I did some things, and looking back as I was preparing for some of this, looking back, I realized that I was striving so hard to find my own brand of prodigal. I was trying so hard to figure out how I could be the one to grab that attention, good or bad, negative or positive, it didn't matter, as long as I was getting some, because I needed it. I needed it. Does anybody see the problem with that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not an addict. I'm not an addictive person for the most part. I mean, I've got some stuff that I get pretty partial to, but I'm not addicted to anything per se. Mine was the attention. Mine was that love and that all of those good things that are supposed to be attached to a good and wholesome and functioning relationship. I was wanting that so bad. And so anything that would possibly give me just a little bit of that, I wanted it. I wanted it. In fact, I think that's what made me, in retrospect, I can say this now, but I think that's what made me such a good therapist, is because I gave so much because I wanted some in return. I gave, and I still do that. I know boundaries now, sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. I know boundaries now, but I gave, and I would burn myself out to the point that I didn't even want to get out of bed most of the time, because I had spent all week just giving and trying to do everything that I could so that maybe, just maybe, somebody would turn back around and say, "Oh, well, thank you, Aislin. I appreciate you so much." Can't do it. You can't live your life like that. You cannot, because if you do, you're never going to receive enough of what you are looking for.
Yeah, that's right.
The only thing that gives you that is, we know what?
Jesus.
Exactly. You find your identity and you find your worth and you find that validation and that restoration through Christ. That's the only way that you get the full cup. Right?
Right.
Because, since I've been here, Barry has been so complimentary and he has been so uplifting to me. And as wonderful as that is, and as wonderful as that makes me feel, it lasts usually about an hour.
Right.
Right? And then I'm back to, well, I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do this right. When I walked in tonight, I told him, I was like, this is either going to be great or it's going to be a 10-minute belly flop. And everybody's going to be like, okay, don't bring her back up here, please. But those praises and those affirmations and that validation that we get from everybody else when we're working really hard and trying our best, they're great, but they don't last. It's not something substantial. And so one of my absolute favorite verses in the Bible, and I don't want to misquote it, and so I looked it up too. Hang on. One of my absolute favorites that I try to push this to my clients too. It says, "Behold what manner of love the Father has bestowed on us, that we should be called the children of God." And that in itself, that one sentence says everything that anybody needs to know about being, first of all, in recovery. Everything that you need to know about being a sibling of a person who is in recovery. Parent, doesn't matter. The child of a person who is in recovery, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. And recovery doesn't really have anything to do with it either. The only thing that you need to know to function in this lifetime and be happy and healthy is to think about the love that the Father has bestowed on us,
Yes,
to call us
that's
children of God.
That's it.
Because it doesn't matter what I'm able to do for anybody else. If I don't have that within me, then it's not going to matter a whole bunch. I am going to be that Pharisee older brother standing over here and being jealous and looking down my nose and saying, oh, look at him, that sinner over there. He doesn't deserve the fatted calf. I'm going to be that person. I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person who can recognize that someone is hurting and I have something that can help them.
Yes.
I have that love that the Father has bestowed on us. I have the message of Jesus Christ in order for me to give and to pour out into someone who doesn't recognize that maybe right now.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I went off my book. I knew I would. So anyway, I've told you a pretty good bit of the story, and I told you about me trying to find my own brand of prodigal and trying to find my own place where I could get that attention, and I never did find it. Just in case y'all were wondering, I never did find it. I wound up a divorced single mother, and my little girl is, like I said, the picture of perfection. She is 5, she is the smartest thing in the world, and she is funny, and she can sing, and she can draw, and she can do all this really good stuff, and you'd think at some point that would be validation too.
Yeah.
It didn't serve as validation. You're not going to find validation in your kids either.
Exactly right.
So, anyway, my brother, he is a very, like I said, a very attractive person, and there was a point that, and it was this past October, we had a day-long revival event, okay? And so my whole family sings, and we all sing together, and this is what kind of prompted me to kind of start therapy, if you want to be really honest. So we went to this day-long revival, and it was great, and me and my mom and daddy sang early in the morning, and we did a great job, and everybody was happy and woohoo. And then later that afternoon, my brother and my sister-in-law were coming, and they were singing, and Corey was giving his testimony, because it really is, in all sincerity, it is a fantastic testimony. He was giving his testimony, and so, like I said, we did our stuff, and then they came later that afternoon, and he did his stuff, and y'all, I'm telling you, everybody in that place got saved. After Corey got done, everybody got saved. And I'm being a little bit facetious, but truthfully, I mean, it was a very moving experience. Everybody really, kind of linked into what he had to say, because he's the prodigal son. He is the definition of it. And so, anyway, afterwards, everybody was coming up, and you would think after years of doing this that it wouldn't bother me quite as much, but everybody was coming up, and they were talking to my parents, and they were saying, Tanya, Ricky, oh, I know you're so proud of Corey. Oh, what a blessing Corey is. Oh, he's such a wonderful person. I know you're so proud to be able to call him your son.
Wow.
And I'm standing over in the corner, and I'm like, hello. I was up on that stage too, y'all. I did some stuff too. That was so not the right spirit for me to have. And that stayed with me. It was not right. I was wrong. I should have been happy that he was up there and he was making an impact on those people. But I couldn't really help it. I mean, that hit my soul pretty deep. It hit me down in places that hadn't really been disturbed in a little while. And I left feeling very defeated.
But is that really true that you shouldn't have felt that way? Because that seems like a normal way that any normal person would feel.
Absolutely.
That doesn't seem like it's the wrong thing. I mean, I know morally we don't want to, people can judge you on that. But to me, I would be more worried if you had no care for what you brought to the table.
Well, I guess I'm saying that my stuff, my invisibility was showing more than my happiness was.
Gotcha.
Because I mean,
You're a human.
I am a human sometimes. We have to allow ourselves to do that sometimes. But yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I have been very bitter when I should have been rejoicing with the fatted calf. I have been standing in the field saying, oh, well, I didn't even get a goat, when I should have been around the fire eating with my family and celebrating the fact that the prodigal had come home, right? And so, like I said at the very beginning, this is not a story of redemption. This is a story of restoration, of me being able to come back into working order and being able to put back together those pieces that for whatever reason, didn't get put in the right way earlier on. I'm trying to find out how to do it now, because if I'm able to figure it out now, I don't have to continue that cycle. And we talk a lot about that here, especially in our Journey to Freedom group, but you cannot continue those cycles that are maladaptive and that are toxic, because whatever you are feeling in that moment and whatever you are experiencing, that's usually what we tend to project onto our kids. And I'm gonna tell you, I never want my child to feel like she's invisible or like she doesn't matter. I preach the word worthy to just about every client who comes into my office, whether they are 72 years old or whether they are 5 years old. That word has become my mantra. That has become something that we talk about. What is your truth? What is the number one thing that you can hold on to no matter what? Mine is that I am worthy. I have been called worthy. And it's not because of anything I've done. It's not because I had straight A's in high school, and it's not because I've got these degrees or anything like that. It's not because of anything that I've done, but it's by the fact that Jesus decided that I was worthy enough to die for me.
Amen.
And to call me an heir to everything that God has to give, right? We're heirs and joint heirs, is what Scripture says. We are heirs and joint heirs with Christ Jesus. And so, if I can sum up the whole thing that I've said in these very short minutes, I've actually gone longer than I expected to, so yay me. It's just the fact that it doesn't really matter what your situation is. It doesn't really matter if you were the invisible one or if you were the life of the party. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because we are all moving toward a certain goal that is not here on this earth, that's not here for us to tangibly touch right now. We are working and we are building ourselves up to be the ambassadors to Christ, yes, but the absolute best versions of what we can be here. And part of that is finding that restoration. Part of that is getting ourselves back into working order, finding what's maybe missing over here, or finding what's broken over here, and switching it out for something a little bit different so that we can get back into functioning order, right? And so I do have a song, and I hope that it's okay that I sing a song.
Yes.
This song is called To the Table, and it's one of my absolute favorite songs in the entire world. I sing it all the time, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Maybe I won't mess it up too much. Hear the voice of love that's calling.